So welcome everybody to this next session of the opening day of WOW Festival. I'm Jude Kelly, the Artistic Director of the Southbank Centre, and you're the wonderful audience. And here we go. And on this particular panel, we're splitting it into three sections, and I'll just explain. First of all, we have Sarah Brown on my left, who I'll introduce in a second, who's going to give a short but important keynote, and then we'll question her, I will question her. Then Valerie Amos will take over that same hot spot. And after that, we'll come to Gordon Brown on my right, and then finally to Ziauddin Yousafzai, who will also introduce some of the subject matter that we're talking about, which is primarily to do with mobilizing action and how you change the world. At the very end of that session, there will be a short time for questions. The questions will only be taken if they're relevant to what we're discussing. And I just say that in case there's any press in the house. And actually, I would say, press hold back, if you don't mind, because in actual fact, the session, as you see, there's a wonderful group of girls up there. Where are you from? Exactly, so. And so it is important that the audience get a chance to ask their questions. So I'm going to start by introducing Sarah Brown, who actually sort of helped mistress mind this session as a whole anyway, and I'm very thankful to that, Sarah. She's the founding chair of the Global Business Coalition for Education. She's the CEO of the Office of Gordon and Sarah Brown Limited. She's the president of the international children's charity Piggy Bank Kids. She's the co-founder of the Maternal Mortality Campaign and global patron of the White Ribbon Alliance for Safe Motherhood. She received the Vision and Impact Award from the Global Business Coalition for Health. She got an honorary fellowship, which I think is extraordinary, from the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists.
Without a medical degree.
Without a medical degree. I mean, that's got to be good, yes. And the Recognition Award from the International Federation of Gynecology and Obstetrics. She led a number of companies, including a very substantial global arts PR firm. And she's really also a fantastic patron of many organisations, including the First Women's Award. She's the patron of Women's Aid, Shine Education Trust, Maggie's Cancer Caring Charities, and a non-executive director of the Harrods Group. She also has a life as well. Occasionally, she lives in London and Scotland with her husband, who's here, and she's the UN Special... And she has two wonderful sons who I've had the privilege to meet at our Imagine Festival. So, Sarah, please take the floor. We're very pleased to hear from you. Sarah Brown.
Thank you, Jude. My job is to talk about international activism as we start this session. I want to set out the argument for achieving real and lasting change for girls and women. I've given hundreds of speeches about what needs to happen for girls and women, and I want to use this platform and your interest in gathering for the Women of the World Festival to argue how we can get there. I want to argue that feminism is entering a new wave, one which draws on our past, but is better suited to shaping our future. I believe we've now inverted the old suggestion that the personal is political, and we live in an age where the political is personal. And I think I need to explain what I mean by that. In the women's liberation movement of the 1970s, when activists used to say the personal was political, it meant that the patriarchy wasn't just something imposed from above or outside, but something we could either replicate or resist in our everyday lives. Those feminists were amazing pioneers in helping women and men to think about their relationships and their family lives through the prism of power, and in encouraging women to see the limitations and barriers they faced as a personal issue between them and their partner, between them and their boss, but also as manifestations, really, of social forces which were being played out in every house in their street and office in their town. Those ideas changed the world and changed my life, because they ensured that the girls of my generation were being raised by a mother who never stopped learning and leading. In my case, my mother set up a nursery school in the middle of East Africa, went on to become a head teacher of a London primary, and completed her own PhD in her 70s. But I think modern feminism has something new to contend with. Today, it's not simply the case that the personal is political, but the political is intensely personal. All over the world, we see the politicization of the most intimate questions of women's autonomy. We see it played out in India today, in the fight over the continued use of the grotesque two fingers test on rape victims. And we saw it in the United States last year, when candidates said things like, women don't become pregnant through rape, because if it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to shut that whole thing down. Just how bad things got in the US elections was summed up by Alec Baldwin when he tweeted, "You know when your party is in trouble, when people ask, did the rape guy win? And you ask, which one?" The fight we face now is for a public square that works for women. It's no longer just a question of how much power we have in our personal lives, or whether we have access to the vote and the political power that comes with it. Those battles remain important and are not yet won. But I think we face a third big battle about our common ground, about whether women are safe in public space, about the tenor of our public debate, and about whether we are prepared to invest to give girls the skills they need for public leadership. I know that people want to know about campaigning and practical ways that we can make a difference. So I'll try and illustrate each of them with some actions that I hope will help. Problem number one is whether at the most basic level, women are safe. If women aren't safe from sexual assault, street harassment, forced marriage, modern slavery and trafficking, then they'll never be able to fulfill their potential. And all of these issues are caused by complicated interplay of public policy failures and cultural factors, so they won't be easy to solve. I'd urge you to take a look at ihollerback.org, which lets women log instances of street harassment so that they no longer feel alone and policymakers get a sense of where the harassment hotspots are in each city. In the UK, the Twitter feed @EverydaySexism lets women share their stories of the stereotyping they face every day. One I spotted on there when I looked at it was a woman saying that working in a catering environment, that a guy had flicked some condiments onto her chest and then picked up a napkin to rub it off. And when she complained, said she shouldn't complain because she had nice boobs. In Gordon's global work on child labour, he met children in Delhi as young as 8, freed from a terrible bonded labour by the organisation run by Kailash Satyarthi, which is coordinating the global march on child labour. And I've been impressed by the long-term approach that the elders are taking to the global campaign against child marriage and its Girls Not Brides coalition for activists to work together. So there are lots of talented people giving their all to the fight to stop violence against girls and women. And in my work with the White Ribbon Alliance, I see the shift to national alliances in country where they're looking to ensure a respectful care from midwives and health workers to their patients, treating one mother at a time. One of the things I find most interesting about each of these campaigns is that it's not traditional advocacy campaigns to make demands of policymakers. Instead of trying to get concessions out of the powerful, these campaigns turn participants into the powerful by giving women and girls ways to challenge their oppression directly and to make their work safer. I'll try and tweet some of the campaigns later so that you can pick up some of the links I've just talked about and you can add your voice to them. Problem number two is whether the public debate itself is just so hostile and hate-filled that women are putting off from even venturing an opinion. I remember joining in the Twitter campaign on Claire Balding's dignity and resilience in responding to a newspaper calling her childish homophobic names just recently. Just in the last few weeks, we've seen historian Mary Beard responding to some of the truly vile things said about her when she appeared on Question Time a couple of months ago. Individual women are refusing to be bullied out of the public square, and when that happens, we should applaud and stand with them. I know from my own experience how much supportive posts and messages can mean when the going is hard. So if you see a woman getting a lot of abuse, get in touch and let her know that she's not alone. And we also need a more structural solution so that she really is not alone, by which I mean we need more women in positions of public and private sector leadership. I'm interested in the schemes that help more women into the spotlight, more women into the boardroom, more women elected into public office. And I was pleased to see the launch of the Women's Room, which is an online catalogue of female experts to help get rid of the nonsense where lots of big debates happen on TV and radio without a single woman's voice being heard. So I think we already have a bit of sense about how we make women safer in the public square, how we make our public debate into one that women will still want to participate in. And what we still need to address is what for me is the single biggest issue and the one closest to my heart, and that is giving girls the skills and confidence to seize the opportunities which are in front of them. If we look at women who are in leading positions in every continent around the world, from Aung San Suu Kyi to Graça Machel, Dilma Rousseff in Brazil, Julia Gillard in Australia, they all have one thing in common. They all have an above-average level of education. Education is the key to unlocking women's leadership and the key, therefore, to transforming the world, not just for girls and women, but for everybody. New research has shown that providing universal education in developing countries can lift their economic growth rates by up to 2% a year, and the results are starkest of all when it comes to educating girls. All the evidence shows that when you educate a girl for each extra year that you give her, you raise her chances of living past 5-year-old. Educated mums are more likely to immunize their kids and give them the health care that they need. Educated girls are more likely to stay AIDS-free. They're less vulnerable to sexual exploitation from adults. They marry later, they have fewer children, and they're more likely to educate their children in turn. And perhaps most importantly of all, education increases a girl's chance of well-paid employment in later life. And the evidence suggests that female earners are more likely to spend their wages to the benefits of their children and community than the traditional male heads of the household. So there's plenty of good reasons to invest in education. And the best bit is that we've already promised to. We're not advocating for a new pledge, simply for the fulfillment of one already made. So for me, the argument about whether we should invest in education to get the 61 million children who miss out entirely from school into the classroom is a bit of a no-brainer. For me, there is no question that closing the gender gap in education so that girls are staying in school for as many years as boys are should be a priority. As soon as people hear the facts, they tend to stop asking whether we should do it and start to focus on whether we can. This is not just about another campaign for yet another important issue to get off the ground. This is about enabling all of our campaigns. Chime for Change, Girl Rising, Plans Because I Am a Girl, Annie Lennox and Oxfam's Equals campaign, Katie Piper's Foundation, the White Ribbon Alliance, Women for Women, Her Story, all of our voices to make a difference. We need to keep rolling out the asks, keep up the pressure on the change we need to see in front of us, and as we do this, I've no doubt the decision makers will hear us too. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was very cogent and very warm. Mm-hmm. And I'll just use that word specifically because I know you care very much about this, and it's an interesting thing to look at how strategy and policy and personal come together. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a good thing to suggest to people that their passion can lead them into becoming an activist without necessarily starting from the idea that they have all the policy information at their fingertips. I mean, mm-hmm. Would you agree that most people, and most women in particular, get involved in mobilizing things because personally they suddenly think, I know what this feels like?
I don't think there would be a girl or a woman who wouldn't know what that feels like. They'll have some experience. It's whether you understand that your actions are relevant and that give you a sense of power, and that you act for things that are in your immediate vicinity, but collectively that also builds up a noise. And I've had the opportunity to be on the inside of where a lot of political and government decision making is made. So you see how that happens. But I know that those voices get, you hear that those voices get heard when people are consistent. But we have so many tools available at our disposal with social media and with the individual, face-to-face contacts we have, that all of those actions are relevant and make a difference.
When we talk about girls and women's education, I would suggest that in general, that tends to mean that women think about the position they find themselves in and then start rethinking about the position they might find themselves in. And so you often find that women's education is consciousness raising. Mm-hmm. I mean, it doesn't necessarily say that that's what we'll be doing, but we were just hearing from Siva, mm-hmm. the Indian collective, about inevitably, they started talking about domestic violence, they started talking about childcare, they started talking about health issues. In other words, that women's education is consciousness raising across the board. Should men's education, therefore, be consciousness raising about the equality agenda? Would that also be something that we should be thinking about?
I would say the short answer to that is yes, but I definitely ask the men too. It's how men bring that into the classroom for boys as much as women call for it.
Yes. There's a group of very powerful leaders up there, even if you don't know you are going to be yet. Did you know at a young age that you were going to start thinking specifically about women in politics? Or is this something that's happened to you because as you've had more information or as you've become a mother? I mean, what was the moment when you said, I'm going to make this my campaign?
For me, the campaigns that I've been involved with are evolution. If I look back to the campaigns I was involved with as a teenager, there was the more general support for the general feminist campaigns, and also campaigns around, when I was growing up, it was anti-apartheid, it was anti-racism, it was a wider move for equality, just because you were coming back on the success of that feminist campaign at that time, and it was moving to other issues. For me, I've been so involved with the maternal mortality campaign and so involved in joining with women's voices from all around the world to call for that change, to reduce the number of women dying in pregnancy and childbirth. And I've argued very strongly that the health and well-being of that mother at the centre has such a strong impact on everything else, on the opportunities for education, on health and well-being, or even an impact on the environment over the longer term. But I see education now as a thing that's holding back so much progress in other areas. If we're not educating girls and boys to be good citizens, then we're not educating them also to understand their own health and well-being, how they're raising their families, how they're going to look after and treat the world that we live in. So it's absolutely that sort of turning point, and that without that further progress, so that we can educate every child, I don't see how we achieve everything else.
For all 3 years of the WOW Festival, we've had the support of Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cornwall, and she has appropriately avoided using the word feminist in public. And I say appropriately for the time being, because I don't need to tell this audience how complex that becomes quickly in the press. But it's you just used the phrase feminist.
Yes.
And I came across a quote the other day, which is, feminism is the radical proposition that women are people. And something around the idea of the simplicity of racism doesn't seem to manage to collect around feminism in the same simple way. But do you think that if we recovered the word or reclaimed the word or just used the word a lot more?
I think we should use it, and I think we should know what we're talking about when we use it.
And what should we mean when we use it?
I think what we're talking about is an equality for girls and women. I think we're talking about opportunities for girls and women alongside men and boys. And I think that we have to call on men and boys to be part of making sure that that equality exists. So it needs all people to deliver feminism.
Thank you. And can I just also say thank you to Julie Hornsby at this point for signing. And in a second, she's going to pass over to Julie Ross, to Jo Ross, who will also be signing for us. Sarah, thank you. We'll come back to the bigger discussion in a second. So now I wanted to introduce somebody that you will have seen a lot on television as well, Valerie Amos. Again, a very, very distinguished history in this sense. But just to say a few things about her, she was born in Guyana. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology, a Master of Arts in Cultural Studies, and many, many honorary doctorates. She was Baroness-in-Waiting and the Government Whip in the House of Lords, as well as spokesperson on international development between 1998 and 2001. She also tackled women's issues and social security. She was appointed to the House of Lords in 1997. She served as the leader of the House of Lords and Secretary of State for International Development from 2001 to 2003. She served as Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, responsibilities for Africa, for Caribbean, Consular Affairs, the Commonwealth and Britain's overseas territories. On the 6th of September 2010, Valerie took up the post of Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordination. She was appointed to the United Nations Secretary General She was appointed by Ban Ki-moon on the 9th of July 2010. And she really has been an absolutely committed and apparently effortless campaigner. I'll just say that because there's always a particular air about you, which is that, oh, it's just so simple. Just as I had the backstage moment of saying, is this okay? And you said, yes. Why? What's any problem? So the Millennium Goals are one of the things that we're thinking about at the moment. But Valerie, can I hand over to you to tell us where we're up to in this journey of mobilising and campaigning? Thank you.
Jude, thank you very much, and happy International Women's Day, everyone. It basically has to be effortless because Jude told me I was speaking about something completely different to what I had prepared for. So, about 5 minutes ago. So, thank you very much. And it's a real pleasure, I have to say, to follow Sarah, who I think set out so very clearly what we can all do and the contribution that we can all make. But really, making the case of us needing to work not just individually, but also collectively and institutionally on all of these issues. And one of the campaigns that I think that has had an extraordinary impact is the United Nations Millennium Development Goal campaign. Even though, as we approach 2 years to 2015, there is still so much that we have not managed to achieve. And I'm sure that most of you in this room know that the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, are the development targets which were set by world leaders. And I think this is the really important thing to remember. All of our leaders at that time signed up to these goals in 2000 to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, to improve health and education, particularly for women and girls by 2015. And as we approach that deadline, we know that there have been considerable gains, but progress has been slowest on the goals related to women, from improving maternal health to ending hunger because of the continued discrimination and violence against women and girls. And it is something which is not only just ruining individual women's and girls' lives, it's holding back entire societies and helping to keep communities in poverty. And one of the things that I think we don't talk enough about is the fact that violence against women is one of the main reasons why we will not achieve the progress we hoped for on the Millennium Development Goals. Because it's good to focus on the issues around education, as Sarah so cogently set out, on the issues of healthcare. But whilst we all still live in societies where we as women have to be ashamed of the violence that is meted out against us, rather than the societies in which we live being ashamed, it becomes an individual issue for each of us rather than a collective issue. And it's been really great, I think, to see that the social media revolution has led to an interconnectedness between us as girls and women, using Twitter, using Facebook, using all of the media available to us to begin to make that case. And I agree with Sarah about the politics of all of this, but I also think it's about a recognition that our politics is no longer just local, it's also global. So on this day, as we celebrate women, I think we also have to recognize and remember the sacrifice that women have made. And we also have to remember how much more we need to do to achieve true equality for women. In my job, and I have to say, a pretty tough job where I'm going around the world looking at the places where there are humanitarian crises because of natural disasters, but also because of conflict. And I am inspired by women every day. But I also become very angry and very frustrated by what women have to endure. It's not enough in a world where girls still don't necessarily have a right to an education for us to stay silent, where women will die needlessly in childbirth and where poverty has a female face. The grinding reality of the daily life of millions of women in our world is something most of us in this room cannot imagine. So today, as we salute women's excellence, and I think we should salute women's excellence and women's contribution, we must also act on the pernicious discrimination and persistent abuse, which is the daily reality for too many of the women in the world. I feel very strongly that if we don't speak out more forcefully as women about the culture of violence against women, we will not deliver on the aspirations that we set ourselves in the Millennium Development Goals. So I'm particularly proud to share a platform today, not just with Sarah, but also with Ziauddin, the father of the remarkable Malala, and also with Gordon Brown, because together they are fighting for the rights of girls to be educated. And on International Women's Day, I cannot say how important that is. So let me conclude by just saying a few things about what I think we need to do. Our campaigns need not just to be individual, they need to be national, and they need to be global. And I think that we have the capacity and we have the resources to be able to do that. We have to put the right to education at the center of our campaign. But we also have to raise our voice, collectively and individually, against the sexual violence and abuse that women face every day. We all have a role to play. Every day, as I said, I'm inspired by the women I meet and the strength that they show. But I also feel very strongly that they should not have necessarily to show that strength in some of the situations in which they find themselves. Syria is the crisis that is right at the top of my agenda right now. There are over 1 million Syrians who have fled to neighboring countries. 80% of them are women and children. And I have sat down with some of those women in Lebanon and in Jordan. I've listened to the pain of what they have fled from. Women talking about their husbands being killed. One woman watched her mother being burnt alive. But her voice broke most when she talked about the fact that she had literally sold her daughter to someone to maintain the safety and security of her daughter, because she was so worried about the abuse that her daughter might face if she did not have male protection. I listened to the horrors of those stories day in and day out. And I'm thankful that we do have a world and we do have societies where women can come together, where they can give support, but crucially, where we know we have to continue that campaign. We need to show our support locally, nationally, and globally. We need the men in our families and in our societies to raise their voices. And that's why I'm so glad that Gordon and Ziauddin are here, because they're not just showing support, they're also leading the way in that support. Malala, her sisters, her friends deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Can can I ask you about the first thing that you said, which I thought was very powerful, which is that if women carry on feeling as if it is a personal responsibility to protect themselves from violence, then actually they are always having to be on the alert for a dimension of civic life which should belong to everybody as a responsibility. Why do you think it is that we have so far been unable to get the world to collect around the idea that the level of violence against women in war, in crisis, and domestically just doesn't matter that much?
I think it's for a number of reasons, and I think some of them are pretty painful reasons. I think some of it is about the fact that we talk about domestic violence, and that is because we say domestic, it's seen as being about the private, not the public sphere. So that is one element of it. We talk about cultural norms, and we don't feel brave enough to challenge those. I think it's also institutional. I think that there is an issue of who exercises power in many of our societies, and how we find ways to challenge that power. I mean, I was talking to someone earlier today about the fact that in this job I've been to the Democratic Republic of the Congo twice, particularly to the eastern side of the country. I mean, this is a country where rape and violence has been used as a tool, as a weapon of war. We're seeing the same thing in Syria right now. We talk about it, but the way in which we talk about it somehow makes it distant rather than personal. And every time I go there and I talk to women, I feel completely useless because I feel as if I have nothing to offer them in terms of not only making sure the world understands their story and the impact that it's had, but crucially, what is the next step? How do we change this? How do we change the fact that in so many societies this is just assumed to be the way it is, and that even in our own society here in the United Kingdom, we have had to work so hard to even get the issue of domestic violence on the public agenda. So I think it's painful for women. I think we have to speak out more, and I've been, Sarah and others have been very involved in campaigns to do this, but I think we can't stop talking about it. I think that as women in positions of responsibility, that actually we have an even greater responsibility to raise our voice. And I think that part of the shame that I talked about, that we have to help women to get over this view that it's something shameful for us. It is shameful in 2013 that we are seeing rape and pillage of women as something which is viewed almost as natural. That is the shame.
A cultural norm.
Yes.
In all kinds of ways,
yes,
across all societies. Yeah. I've sometimes found myself also baffled, and hurt is a good word, hurt at looking at the brutality done to women and thinking, do men hate women then? Now, I know all my personal evidence is that that's not true. And men say to me, well, don't blame all men for things, I've never done this, I wouldn't do this, etc. And I completely accept that. But the inability to have the mobilized power that men have, speaking out for these things, and in a way instructing and supporting, educating men to not take that cultural norm route. I think this has been slow, hasn't it? It's been more than slow in the coming of it. And we're going to come to Ziauddin and Gordon in a second, so there are exceptions to all rules. But in your role, going around the world as a powerful leader, and you happen to be a woman, does it get marginalized back into, well, you're a woman, you would talk about these things? I mean, is that also part of the problem, that not enough men are taking it up specifically as a cause?
I do think that we have to encourage, help, support men to. I mean, I'm a feminist, and I have absolutely no problem calling myself a feminist. I never have. I do think, however, that some women find it difficult to describe themselves as feminists because parts of the world have, or parts of the media, have made an automatic assumption that if you're a feminist, it means you hate men. So we're sort of always battling against something which is not what our feminism is about. And in the same way, I think making sure that the men, I think it is a majority of men who would actually understand the need to speak out about this agenda, making it possible to do so is very important indeed, and making it an issue that is not, it's not a joke. This is not a joke. This is about the quality of the societies that we live in, the quality of the experience that we have as women. So it's it's a difficult conversation for us to have, but it's an essential conversation for us to have. And I do think that sometimes as women become more senior, it becomes harder to talk about, precisely because, there's this feeling that, you are a woman, you would talk about it. That's why I think we have to keep talking about it, because, and I think that, Sarah mentioned a couple of women leaders who, they are presidents of their countries, and they have talked themselves about the personal abuse that they faced, for example, when they were fighting for the freedom of their countries. That is so important. It's such an important message, not just for the girls and women in their societies to hear, but also for the men and boys in their societies to hear.
Sarah mentioned a number of organisations, all the different kinds of groups that are formed to try to achieve particular issues. And obviously the point about WOW is to collect all of those people together, to be a space where all of those things can be heard about and you can put a spotlight on it. For those of you who are around tonight who are not going to one of the concerts, then on the ballroom floor, after all of those organisations have had their own personal cocktail parties, which they're having to do fundraising, then they're doing what you call a pecha kucha on the ballroom floor, where each of them will talk for 12 minutes about their different organisations. So if you want to know what's happening across the board in the UK, a lot of those organisations are here to tell you tonight. Thanks, Valerie. I'm going to pass now on to Gordon and Ziauddin. I feel like I shouldn't have to introduce Gordon Brown, but I'm going to. Obviously, one of the things I've always known about you is how deeply interested and committed you are to history, your love of history and your love, therefore, of learning from history, which is one of the things that we know we can if we but try. Obviously, you will know that he served as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and leader of the Labour Party from 2007 to 2010, and is widely credited as preventing the Second Great Depression through his stewardship of the 2009 London G20 summit. He previously served as Chancellor of the Exchequer from 1997 to 2007, making him the longest-serving Chancellor in modern history. He's written several books, including Beyond the Crash, Overcoming the First Crisis of Globalization, and he has a forthcoming work, 2025, Shaping a New Future. He's the United Nations Special Envoy for Global Education, and he's also a Member of Parliament, of course, for Kilcardy and Cowdenbeath. Gordon, it's been very, very gratifying to see a world leader take on the issues that you are taking on at the moment. And I know that you're going to introduce Ziauddin yourself, but we'd like to hear from you about the work that you're involved in and your optimism about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I first of all congratulate you, Jude, and everybody here, champions of equality and justice, on the extraordinary success of International Women's Day, and the fact that this is probably the most successful ever International Women's Day, because the issues that you care about are now moving right to the centre of the agenda, not just in this continent, but every continent. So I congratulate all of you on the great success of International Women's Day. I also want to say that my role here, and you may wonder why I am here, the last time I came to the Southbank, someone quoted Shelley at me and said, "I'd lost the art of communication, but not, alas, the gift of speech." And the chairperson, before I stood up to speak, actually said, do you want to speak now, or shall we let people enjoy themselves a little longer? So my role here is first of all, a vote of thanks to the extraordinary women who have spoken this morning, to Jude for the organization of this, to Valerie for her tremendous work in every continent as a leader of the humanitarian effort of the whole international community, and of course to Sarah, my friend, my partner, my mentor, my leader. And I suppose my second role is I'm the warm-up speaker. And I'm the warm-up speaker for an extraordinary person who's here today, Ziauddin Yousafzai. You will know that a few months ago in Pakistan, an extraordinarily brave young girl who demanded the right that she go to school was shot by a Taliban member on a bus for simply wanting to go to school. And that girl was asked by the Taliban assassin, who is Malala? And when she said the words, I am Malala, that is now the symbol for millions of girls in the Asian subcontinent who are now standing up for the right of every girl to education. And I think the first thing we would want to do is to send our best wishes to Malala, that she makes an absolutely full recovery and she is restored to complete strength to be able to continue what is her mission, a fight for every girl to have the chance of education. And Ziauddin is an extraordinary man, a school teacher, a head teacher. His school was burnt down, his school was stopped by the Taliban. He himself was under a death threat from the Taliban. And the fact that he is going around the world and campaigning for a girl's right to education, working with his daughter to raise this great international issue, I think we are very privileged to have you here today, and I wish you success in all your efforts working with both the United Nations and the international organizations promoting girls' education. It's a real pleasure to have you here with us today. What Malala did, and what happened after Malala was shot, because I went to Pakistan only a few days after the attempted assassination, is that hundreds of thousands, indeed millions of girls around the world, 3 million people have signed the petition, hundreds of thousands of people in demonstration have said that no longer will they accept the complacency of adults about their rights, and they themselves are going to stand up. And this is the new superpower that I think we're seeing unveiled, the biggest event, I think, of the last few months. Girls themselves standing up for their rights and demanding that other people support them and refusing to accept that these rights cannot be granted in the year 2013. And you see it in the reaction to the unspeakable rape in India, where girls and boys demanded a change in the law, which is now happening in the Indian Parliament. You see it in Nepal, where the violence against girls has been protested by demonstrations that preceded anything that had happened in India. And let me give you another example. In Bangladesh, when we speak later this afternoon, we will show in front of the event a film, and you will see a girl in Bangladesh of 15, a girl who stood up against her parents' desire to sell her off in marriage and said that she had a right to finish her education. And with the support of girls in her own area in Bangladesh, they declared a child marriage-free zone, and they became known as the Marriage Busters because they defended the right of that girl against the patriarchy and the hierarchy of that community. And now we are seeing in Bangladesh child marriage-free zones appearing in many, many districts. And I believe that this is a movement which emphasizes not just that the new superpower, as I say, is girls coming together with girls to fight for their rights, but this is a movement that is going to extend out of Bangladesh, right across Asia, into Africa, and throughout the world. And I believe that over these next few months, as we prepare for a United Nations meeting that will discuss these issues, the power of girls and the power of women determine the agenda, not simply satisfied that the issues are marginalized to the bottom of an item in a political discussion, is going to become a very prominent issue. And why is that the case? Because the issues, in my view, are not simply about emancipation now, they're about empowerment. And yes, we need, as Valerie has said, we need the freedom from violence, the freedom from rape, the freedom from violation, and that is a demand that is one that has to be met by changes in legislation and policing and in attitudes of men throughout the world. But yes, we also need empowerment, girls and women empowered to be able to make decisions and realize their potential for themselves. I was in South Sudan a few months ago. South Sudan, the newest country in the world. And the first thing I did after leaving Juba, the capital, was go to a village, and I met a group of women. Some of them had been married at 12, some at 13, some at 14, all married in their early teens. They had just come out of North Sudan into South Sudan as refugees. They were worried about the security and the shelter. They were worried about food. They were worried about their homes. They were worried about many, many things. But they said to me the first priority for them was that their children should have the chance of an education. And then I went to the village school in this area just outside Juba, the capital. And there was one hut, and there was only 20 children able to be educated in that classroom. And most of them, unfortunately, were boys and not girls. And there were 2 teachers, and they had basic books, but nothing else. But there was a small portal in that classroom. And outside, looking in, were dozens of children, girls and boys, who were unable to get education in that area in South Sudan, who were looking in at something they couldn't have. And you know, in South Sudan today, there are only a population of 10 million. There are only 400 girls in senior education in secondary school. And in a comparable populated country, the figure would be 100,000, not 400. And that is the level of discrimination. There are 500 million girls today who will never complete their education. There are, of course, 32 million girls who are not even going to school at all today. Only 1 in 700 girls in a country like Chad will ever have the chance of getting higher education. And the expenditure on girls' education is on average in Africa only $400 per person, compared with the 100,000 we spend on our education for a Western child up to the age of 16. $400 against $100,000 for the total bill for education, a 1 in 250 chance of getting a fair opportunity for these girls. And that's why I think the agenda is changing for the future. And that's why education, which is the symbol of girls' empowerment, moves to the center of the agenda. And that's why next month with Ziauddin and others, we will have a meeting to look at all the countries that are off track in delivering girls' education and demand that there be changes with finance to make that possible. And on July the 12th, on Malala's birthday, we will have the first Malala Day, that we will celebrate girls' education and the need for it in every part of the world. I met another girl when I was in Tanzania, and she was called Miriam. And I met her in a field because she was an AIDS orphan, and she had no fixed home. And a group of AIDS orphans were brought into this field to meet us. Her father had died, and then her mother had died. She didn't have any close relatives, so she was forced from one family to another. She herself was suffering from HIV. She also had tuberculosis. And when you saw this girl of 12, there was no hope in her eyes at all. At 12, when everything should be in front of you, to be denied not just the family life because her parents were dead, but the chance of an education and the chance, of course, of decent shelter and food. Fortunately, as a result of some of the movements that we just talked about today, the organizations we're talking about, that girl now has a chance. That girl now has an education, and that girl now has hope for the future. It's said by someone that you can survive for 30 days without food, and you can survive for 8 days without water, and you can survive for 8 minutes without air, but you cannot survive for a second without hope. What you are doing in this International Women's Day is giving hope that we can change things, that equality is not a distant dream, but a practical possibility, that if we can secure education for every girl in the world, then we can secure advancement, social justice, and the possibility of transformative social change. I believe that the power of girls working with girls to change things is the biggest change we're seeing this year, and I hope all of us can support it.
So then we come to Ziauddin, and we've already welcomed you to the stage. But this is the first time, I think, that you've appeared in the UK talking from a platform in this way. I mean, you are already and were already a peace activist, an educationalist. You have run campaigns in Pakistan. Your daughter comes from a family of activism. And speaking as a daughter of a father who always championed the girls, I'm one of 4 daughters, it means an enormous amount, I think, to have a father who wanted her girl to stand up for her rights. And she's done it to an exceptional world status. We'd like to hand over to you to hear from you about where you think the current campaign is. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My close friend, of whose friendship I am proud, Mr. Gordon Brown, the director of this Women of the World Festival 2013, Jude Kelly, Sarah Brown, and Dr. I should call you Dr. Valerie Amos, ladies and gentlemen, and especially the children who are sitting in the back benches. I see children after some 6 months. I miss a lot of things of my country, but the most important thing, the most moving thing, which I miss, those are the faces of the small children in the classrooms. Because basically, I was a teacher, and I'm still proud to be a teacher. And I used to go from classroom to classroom. So once again, after a long time, I see kids. And Khalil Gibran says that keep me away from the greatness which does not bow before children. So kids, I bow in front of you. Most welcome to you. I congratulate Jude Kelly for organizing this grand festival, and I really feel honored to be the part of this important day at this important gathering, remarkable event. I think when we talk of women of the world does not mean women in Paris, women in London, women in Islamabad, women in Dhaka. Women of the world means women all around the world. Women in the far-flung rural areas of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Libya, Nigeria. Women of the world mean girls who go to the rich people's house, to the rich people's homes, and while they should study, they should go to school. At that very time, they wash the plates, they rear and look after the children of the rich people. And when we talk about the women of the world, we do mean about the so many girls who are working in the fields while they should go to school. And this is an important day. My daughter says that every day should be a Women's Day. And she's right. She's right. Every day we have to take care of the rights of the women. But this day, on this day, Women's International Day, we just mark it to have an accountability about our behavior, about the women and about the girls. And this day is very important because women are suffering all around the world. They are suffering all around the world. Even today in many countries, 7 out of 10 women are raped, mutilated, abused psychologically, physically. Women are suffering because they are trafficked for prostitution, for labor. Women are suffering because in so many places they are sexually abused. Women are suffering because of the poor maternal facilities, as Dr. referred to. And women are suffering because every year some 5,000 women around the world are being killed in the name of so-called honor killing. And women are suffering because 77 million girls are not being enrolled in any school. So if they are suffering, we have to revisit our ideology. We have to revisit our thinking. We have to revisit the constitutions of different states. I think that since centuries, men have been very unjust and unfair towards their other good half. I think that we must have a change as an individual in our approach towards the rights of our sisters, mothers, and daughters. I think as a society, different societies must revisit about their ideology and about their approach towards the rights of the girls. And on this remarkable day, I must say that some of the states have constitutionally protected the rights of their people, men and women. But there are countries where they have introduced unjust and unfair laws which are contrary to the basic human rights. So I think we have to work on all these levels. And since centuries, you see that it's very much interesting. In the countries like mine and other so many countries, sons are the, usually parents are known by their sons. And just for the keeping the identity of a father, he has so many daughters in search of a son. For example, if some father has one daughter, no daughter is celebrated. Her birthday is not celebrated. When she comes to this world, that is not an event. And in search of his identity, they have so many daughters. And when the son comes, they get satisfied after 5 daughters, 6 daughters. So I am one of the luckiest and one of the fortunate fathers who is known by his daughter. And since centuries we see that by the theology, by the theocrats, by the writers, by the norms, traditions, customs, they have deprived women from their basic rights. Even, I say, sorry to his noble soul, William Shakespeare could not help it. And due to the prevailing situation of his time, he had to say, "Thy name is frailty, woman." And oh lady, you are the name of weakness. We must say now that thy name is no more frailty, thy name is strength, thy name is stability, thy name is power. And there is very interesting thing in our country here maybe. They say that there is always a powerful woman behind, in front of a very amazing man. For example, people will say that Gordon Brown is very amazing because of Swara. For example, or for example, any man who is amazing, so it is said that he's amazing because there is a woman, there is a wife, or there is mother behind the man. Women have tolerated men for so long, and they have been behind to make men powerful, amazing. Let's make daughters amazing, sisters amazing. And if at least we don't want to keep behind, we should go side by side with them. And believe me, we feel insecure. There are, in so many societies, when there comes to the rights of women, men feel dishonored, insecure, that what will happen to the family if they give right of education to their daughter. And they become very much intolerant. They become very narrow when it comes to the rights of the girls. Leave alone Taliban. They have no space for anything in their ideology. No culture, no values, no taboos. I'm not talking of them. The common people, every third, fourth person in the third world countries have a talib against his sister, mother, and daughter. What's that? We must change. And to be short, because I took a lot of time, I said three things, only three things. It must be kept in mind. I have an experience of my family. I have one daughter, one wife. Usually some people have 2, 3 in my country, so that's why I say. One daughter, one wife, and 2 sons. What did I do? Some people think that Ziauddin might have sat with his daughter and he might have trained her and he might have taught her so many things, philosophies and training and confidence. No, I did nothing. The only thing I did, that I honored my daughter as a person, as an individual. That's all. The only thing, and that is very easy. You don't have to consume time in that. It's just a behavior. It's just an approach. What I did for my wife, I trusted her. And I honored her at par with me. As I am a human being, she is a human being. And she is not my property. She is individual. And she is as free as I am. This simple thing changed my life, changed my family. And believe me, if this family, for example, if I have honored my wife, my daughter, trusted my wife, my daughter, and I have got a very beautiful, very peaceful, very prosperous family, I assure the world, if they do on the global stage, everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. And we saw the world of, today's world is the world of men. I think, sorry to say, I'm a man. And someone may blame me as a feminist. It's okay. I'm a feminist as well. But I say that men's world is full of troubles. There is no peace in Afghanistan, no peace in Pakistan, no peace in Nigeria, no peace in Mali. Men's world is a troublesome world. Men's world is the world of wars. And you see in our culture, in Pashtun culture, when there is some dispute between the men in the village, And a man gets angry, and there is a Kalashnikov hanging on the wall, and he runs to pick up the Kalashnikov to go out and shoot someone. He finds a sister, a mother, a daughter at the doorstep. She says, "Stop, please don't kill and don't get to be killed." That is the role of a woman. I think if we give space to women, we will have a more peaceful world. More prosperous world, more beautiful world. And the last few things, if we do 3 things, again I come to those 3 points. Number 1, honor them, honor your daughters, honor them. Number 2, trust them. And number 3, educate them. And honor is not in the honor killing. Honor is not in killing. Honor is not in persecution. Honor is in protection. Honor is not in killing. Honor is in caring. If you take that approach of honor, you will see a different world. Honor them. Trust them. We don't trust the wisdom of the girls. We say that they are less prudent, less wise, not wiser. Believe me, my daughter is much more wiser than me. My wife even. And men don't confess. So many men have wives more wiser than them. But they don't confess because they feel that, no, I must be wiser than my wife. Honor them, trust them, and third most important thing, educate them. As Sarah said, it's key to all rights. Educate them and let her live alone. She will do everything. She can conquer this world. Thank you very much. Just to wind up my long speech with a poem, small stanza. It is from Meena. Meena was a girl in Afghanistan and who worked for education, and she got martyred. It is in her book. It's very much inspiring and moving. You will enjoy it. She says, "I am the woman who has awakened. I have risen and become a tempest through the ashes of my burnt children. I have risen from the rivulets of my brother's blood. My nation wrath has empowered me. My ruined and burnt villages fill with hatred against the enemy. No longer think of me as weak and incapable, O compatriot. I am the woman who has awakened. I have found my path and will never turn back. Those shackles of my feet I have broken. Those shackles of my feet I have broken. I have opened the closed doors of ignorance. I have said farewell to all golden bracelets. O compatriot, O brother of mine, I'm not what I was. O brother of mine, I'm not what I was. I am the woman who has awakened. I have found my path and will never turn back." Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you. Well done.
I remember thinking when Doreen Lawrence was talking last year, she never intended that she would be the person that really changed the very nature of law and racism in this country, but she did, and she had to. And similarly, you now have a role in the world which will have enormous impact, as of course Malala will herself when she recovers, and is already. And for those of you who didn't fully clock that day, the 12th of July is going to be Malala Day. And that's, again, an incredible thing, significant on the calendar. We all need to think how we will celebrate that day. Can I just say, before we thank our speakers, you've got to get out of this room quickly, because we're setting up for the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment for this evening's concert, which Maren Alsop is leading. You've got half an hour for lunch. Good luck. And we'll see you at the afternoon sessions. But can I just say, what a historic occasion it's been. It's been wonderful. Thank you, our speakers.